Hello everyone on YouTube. So it's currently 3 in the morning and I've just had a 25-kilometer trek to my nearest 24-hour Kmart, and I got some really weird looks from one of the sales clerks there because I've just gone and purchased a small tub of Vaseline because on my tank that Jen is in at the moment, I've got these two Aquaclear 110s, or they were the 500s. I've just got the large sponge, the carbon, because it came with the filter, so I thought I might as well use it, and the Biomax, but it's a double load in each one, so it fills the whole top. I got the Aquaclear 110s because I was sick of cleaning out the canister filter, and I had a couple of other hang-ons and they were just crap. The Aquaclear 70 I had finally wore out because the intake tube had, like where it joins onto here, had worn away, so it was no longer sitting where it was supposed to, so I kept sucking air and wasn't a great flow rate anymore, but you know, it was old. And when you clean them as often as I do, they do wear out a lot quicker. But anyway, they're doing a fantastic job, but I'm guessing because they are a larger unit and they move a lot more water, that a bit of noise is acceptable. But I'm finding that I'm getting a little bit of a rattle occasionally with coming from this impeller engine here from the bottom, and it's worse. Like, I've noticed with all the Aquaclears that they're a lot quieter without the tops on them, but just I can't stand it when they don't have the tops on them. They just don't look right. So I'm going to try a trick that I've seen online with people who've had noisy Aquaclears ranging from the 20 all the way to the 110, and the trick is you grab some Vaseline and you put some Vaseline on the shaft that runs into the engine that the impeller sits on. You put some Vaseline on that and make sure it's distributed evenly over the shaft and around the magnet of the impeller, so that when it goes into the well where it sits, if it vibrates slightly from side to side, it's not going to cause as much of a loud rattle. So hopefully that fixes my issue, because yeah, it is 3 in the morning and I'm very tired, and it's just one of those nights where the smallest noise was extremely loud, so it had to be fixed so I could get a decent night's sleep. And I think Jen's probably a bit frustrated because the light in the place is still on, but she seems to be doing okay. Now I know this tank's only 170 litres, so I think that equivalates to like 48 gallons or something like that. I'm not exactly sure, but it's an overkill of filtration, but the water's crystal clear. I can pick up a handful of that gravel and just chuck it, and then there's nothing underneath it. Like, these filters do a great job, you know. Poop will come right out of her and straight into a filter, so don't have to worry about that very often, considering as I'm not always here. I just have to top off the water when it needs a top off, amongst my regular water changes, which I do quite often, but it maintains itself quite well. Anyway, I'm going to turn off this 110 here, and I'm going to do an experiment with it. I'll come back after I've taken the motor off. Okay, so I've just unplugged it, and I'm just letting the water slowly drain out of it. So once it's drained out, I will take the engine off. Right, so once you've managed to get the motor off the bottom, which is more of a tedious task than I actually thought it would be, which makes a giant mess, I'm just going to take an ordinary cotton bud, and I'm going to dip it into the Vaseline, and I'm just going to put it around this steel spindle here, which is where the impeller sits, like that little hole there. They just slide over the top there, so that when it's running, it's not, because it's got a little bit of a vibration that it can have there. I'm just going to make that as smooth as possible. I have seen with these particular filters that if you have a really fine sand, or maybe a gravel that you haven't washed properly, if there's particles floating around in the tank, like this gravel here is pretty heavy, so it's not a problem from that. But these filters will suck that in, and the tiny grains of sand will grind around inside this motor housing, rubbing up against this magnet, which will put score marks into it, which makes it, of course, an uneven surface, and it can actually grind away at this steel rod. And if that's the case, you got to try and track down a spare part for that, and it can be costly, and it's annoying because then they're loud for however long it takes to do that. So I'm going to fix this up with some Vaseline and see if that makes a difference. It's going to be hard to hear a difference on my phone, but I can tell you if it actually does make a huge difference, because I hope it does, because it was a pain to pull that thing apart. So bear with me and I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so as you can see here, I've put some Vaseline around the tip of the shaft of the impeller housing, and then around the actual magnet as well. If I just lift this up, you can see it's around the outside. Now also, to take care of your O-rings, which is the little rubber seal that sits in between here and here, which creates a watertight seal up in there where the water drips. It's always good to keep them like with moisture, but not just water. So because I've removed it from their housing, it's been exposed to the air. I'm going to put a little bit of Vaseline around the outside as well, just a small amount, just to make sure that it has a watertight seal as well. Just improves the life of the O-rings. I mean, they do expire, but not as soon as most people think. I mean, I've had one for 10 years and I haven't had to replace it, so I just keep them treated that way, and they last a long time. Alright, I'm going to stick this back on the tank and see if it makes a difference. Okay, so it's hard to tell with the camera, but I'm happy to report to you guys that the Vaseline, adding it to this motor here, has made it like 65 to 70% quieter than the other one on the other side. And I'm glad, because that was a trek and a half to the Kmart, plus it's really late and I didn't really want to be fiddling with this right now. But at least I'll get a good night's sleep, and hopefully this helps anyone else who has a noisy power filter like this. It's unusual that they come. I've had a few that I've bought that have come, really quiet, and I've had a few noisier ones. But sometimes, because these are only new as well, sometimes it takes them a little while to wear in. But you know what? This is in no way a negative review video. These things are powerhouses and a half for what they're designed to do. They are a fantastic filter. I love that I don't have to pull out this massive canister filter out from underneath my tank, because I've always had a fear of canister filters leaking. It's, unless you don't put them back together, probably it's highly unlikely, but at least now there's not really much water leaving the tank, and if it does leave the tank, it's going straight back into the tank with no hoses. But yeah, just taking the lid off this one here, they've just got a huge amount of space for biological media. They're so easy to clean. Like these two clips here, you just grab them, with a little bit of fiddling of course. You just grab those two clips and just lift it up, fix what you need to fix. The sponge is quite effective at catching most of the particles, so a lot of the time you don't really have to clean off your other media, which you don't want to do in tap water anyway, which a lot of people that do that, and it irks me. But anyway, so that's quite good. You don't have to replace this one or these. Okay, these are the two you don't want to replace. I have a lot of customers come in at work, they say, oh, these ones have turned brown, so I bleached them, or, I've washed them with a toothbrush, and, my brain sort of stops working for a few minutes because I just try to explain to them that they've killed their cycle, and they don't understand that. So these two, you really don't need to replace for the life of your filter, unless these ones start to crumble, which they can do after a long time. But this one here is one that's it's controversial, People have them to take contaminants and medications out of the water, which it does fairly effectively, but after it's done, they can only absorb so much, and if your tank's clean like this one, it's not really necessary. As I said, I only put it in there because I bought the filters and it came with them, so I just thought I'd use them and then I can throw them away and have more space for biological media, or maybe like a thin piece of filter floss to filter out the finer particles. But yeah, these things are astonishing with the amount of flow rate they have. And even for this size of the tank, I'm quite surprised, because they're moving a decent amount of water, but they're not disturbing too much. Like these plants in the middle, they're not even moving. They're fairly stationary, so it's not too stressful on her, because I know she hates a lot of current in the water. So I've got them facing directly opposite each other at the moment, because they don't actually fit on this section of the tank here. So I'm getting another tank built to fit my stand, where they will both fit on the back of the tank. So I can put my hood back on the top and my glass lids, and it'll look a little bit more appealing. But until then, this setup will work quite well. Anyway guys, I'll catch you guys in the next one.